Let's get some more analysis, broader analysis. Eric Lisann joins us, former state and federal prosecutor, and of course, often someone we lean on for advice on legal issues here at France 24 regarding the states. Eric, always a pleasure to see you. Are you disturbed that Donald Trump has raised all this money off the back of his indictment? It's a phenomenal amount. I'm reading $10 million at least.
Well, I'm not as disturbed by that as I am disturbed by the comments and statements he made last night after the proceeding in court. Regarding the money he's raised, we'll have to see how much of that is real, how much he's just saying that he's raised it, because he is obviously prone to hyperbole, to say the least. But even so, as you have a clip there from my old colleague who was played, in the short run, it's probably not surprising that his base is mobilized. But in the long run, that base is very different than what's needed for him to return to power, so to speak, in a general election. They are two very different electorates that are informed and influenced by very different things with very different views. And that base is a minority of the electorate in the United States.
Eric, the judge reportedly asking Trump, and asking both sides, not to make statements that would inflame Trump, saying that the US is going to hell and it's an insult, among other things. That seems to be going against what the judge said, at least.
Yes, it is. And, no sooner did he leave the courtroom than he returned to his old ways. And as Adam Schiff so eloquently put it in the first of the two impeachment trials against Trump, you can't expect him to change. He will not. There is nothing that will change him. We've seen this time and time again, and this is what he does. And it's extremely dangerous. One can't overstate the risk of violence that society as a whole is subjected to from his remarks. We've seen it time and time again, even isolated lone wolf type actors to mass crowds and organized private militias that rally, as we saw on January 6th. There is a lot of havoc that can be wreaked. The judge has power within his courtroom. Ultimately, he could take more extreme measures, such as issue a gag order, and it might be headed that way if Trump doesn't, if he crosses certain lines. One could argue that he's already crossed it, that he's even criminally incited people by some of his remarks outside the courtroom. That's obviously not a position that the federal authorities have taken, for example, because they have done nothing to crack down on this type of speech. But if it's done inside the courtroom, the judge can take action on it. So this is something that's going to have to be monitored.
Is there a sense, Eric, that this is all playing somehow into the Trump playbook? He's getting maximum coverage. He's on television all the time, and he's sounding off. And to him, I suppose that adds up to winning.
I don't know if it really adds up to winning in his mind, but it's better than the alternatives for him, which is just to take a pummeling without reacting. And he is desperate to return to power. And this is the only real path he has to achieve that, because he's coming from a base, as I mentioned just a moment ago, of essentially a minority of the electorate that's going to support him. So he has to hyper-energize them, including by possibly extrajudicial means, which makes it dangerous. And one of the reasons he's so desperate to return to power is that's really the only way he can avoid all the consequences, seemingly, of these various prosecutions that are arrayed against him. We only have this one in New York so far. So despite all the polemic and debate about whether that's the most important one, right now it is, simply by virtue of being the only one that's been formally brought. But if other ones are brought, whether at the federal level or at the Georgia state level, Trump is going to find himself facing real consequences, including prison. And I think in his mind, the only way he can avoid that is by resuming the office of the presidency.
Eric Lisann, as ever, thank you so very much indeed for joining us. Eric Lisann, former state and federal prosecutor, and very often our legal touchstone here for all matters related to American politics and beyond. Eric, thanks as ever.